Esoterinerd podcast. Episode 130, in which Joe Zabinski and I discuss the Arbatel of Magick, the Olympic Planetary Spirits, and Geomancy. But first,
you might know of
Carl Jung's Red Book, also known as Liber Novus.
And you might know how
to construct your own Liber Novus using active imagination to discover your own personal mythology.
But did you know
of Carl Jung's Black Books, which chronicle the sometimes awkward and roundabout process by which he derived his philosophy, his point of view, Jungian thought and Jungian psychotherapy in the form of the Red Book, which was unpublished until, 15 years ago, and then the Black Books came around. Maybe that was published 20 years ago and this was published, 14 years ago. It's not like new or anything. But if you're interested enough and for some reason you would like to watch me read from these and free associate and share personal anecdotes and go off on tangents and all that good kind of stuff, then feel free to click here, maybe later, maybe after this episode, or whatever order you want to do things in. And check out, they're basically about a half hour per episode of me reading from the Black Books. All right, enough about that. So, there was a YouTuber who was watching my VH Frater BT channel and asked if I had any videos about the Arbatel, because I had pointed him to a couple of... hi, by the way, if you're watching, Rishikesh 1086, 10 something. Anyway, so yeah, I decided to look into it and contact Joe, and we realized that, this is a very interesting document that's kind of in the background in one of the practicus teachings of a traditional Golden Dawn order, and some people surely have dove into it, and we just kind of each dove into it and then decided to have a conversation about it. And you might notice I'm in a different location in the interview, which I'll explain at one point in the interview. And so, without further ado, let's get to that interview, shall we? Hello! Yay! Here we are.
Here we are. How's it going?
Good.
Mm-hmm.
I'll skip the part where we try to figure out how many months it's been.
I don't know. It doesn't
Time
really
doesn't
matter
exist
for us,
here.
right?
Yeah. We're in a timeless space.
Yeah, exactly. And we're in like almost constant communication. So
that's true. Yeah. So you're in Kansas.
I'm in Kansas. Yeah.
That's wild.
It's a beautiful place. It's really interesting because it's everything is like super similar to where I came from, but not quite the same.
Right.
Like even down to like people I see at church, they have the same physical build as the people that I just left back in New England.
Interesting.
Yeah, like the and the people of the same age groups, they're wearing the same clothes, like they bought the same boots and they bought the same shirt and stuff. Yeah.
What's funny is when I walk around here in Delhi and I'm wearing like an Om on my shirt and I see an Indian guy wearing Captain America. It's like, yin and yang. Yeah.
Would it be weird if you wore a Captain America shirt?
I don't know. I mean, it might be a little over the top.
It would be weird weird to me because you don't strike me as like a Captain America sort of guy, you know,
It'd be ironic.
like a Captain America fan, right?
Yeah, yeah. It'd be ironic, when I wore the Jack Parsons shirt and like had my hair down and looked all cool, and like I don't think people understood I was being ironic. Like, imagine if I was the sort of guy who'd wear a shirt like this and look all cool.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like irony so often just crosses into like whatever it is that you're being ironic
Yeah,
about, you
right.
know? And like if you're ironic about something for more than a couple hours, like you just start to become that thing. And then
Yeah. And then
yeah,
sometimes it's like sedimentary layers, like as if I was the sort of person who'd be ironic about that. Wait.
yeah. Sometimes I wonder if we're all in this like giant sleep of ironic sediment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're gonna realize one day, wait a second, we're not even from this planet. I was making fun of the people that were here. Oh, I'll never do that again.
You know what would be ironic is if we did a serious deep dive into the Arbatel.
That would be a little ironic. Yeah, yeah, that would be a little ironic. So, do you want to, would you like to introduce today's topic?
Sure.
Okay.
I first of all, I'd like to thank YouTube user Rishikesh1086, I think. Hi, if you're watching. This one's for you. No, well, thank you for the topic suggestion. Because actually I after that last one, Hindu Golden Dawn, I was like, I'm out. I think I've done everything. I don't have any new ideas. I don't really want to go chasing after. I'm not a very good podcast, host. I don't want to go chasing after like occult authors or reading new occult books or old ones. But yeah, so he had suggested he's a fan of there's a YouTube channel called VH Frater BT's or VH Frater BT, where I post my old. I went through that phase in 2016 and 2017 where I was live streaming my rituals from the sanctuary of Hermes Trismegistus, aka the room beside my bedroom, back at the old house in Los Angeles. And so I took all those old the videos and put them on that YouTube channel. And so he watches those, and we've corresponded a bit just on the YouTube comment thread. And he asked me if I had any, because I told him about Esoterinerd and referred him to a couple of episodes on Esoterinerd, and he asked if I had any episodes about the Arbatel, and I'm like, that rings a bell. That sounds familiar. So I Googled it, and it said something about being a Renaissance era, medieval era grimoire, and I was like, I think Joe would probably know about this. And so I asked you about it, and you were like, oh, that rings a bell, and so then we both dove in and then came to realize, well, yeah, in the practicus of the Golden Dawn, there's the Olympic spirits given, and it mentions in the description of the Olympic spirits that these come from the Arbatel. I think the full title is the Arbatel of Magick or something like that, right?
Hang on. I actually have it open right here on
Oh,
my
good.
computer. Yeah.
That's
Because I thought the title was really interesting too.
It has a longer title too, kind of rambling title on the first page.
Right, right. The thing that both of us read anyway was called Of the Magic of the Ancients, the Greatest Study of Wisdom.
Right.
And then the longer title was Arbatel of Magick, or
Right.
the spiritual wisdom of the ancients, as well wise men of the people of God, as magi of the Gentiles, for the
Yes.
illustration of the glory of God and his love of mankind.
Yes. So
Here we go.
so we decided to both read it and analyze it, and then meet and have this conversation that we're having right now. Whoa, it's so meta. It all came full circle to this very moment.
And here we are.
Here we are. So, what were your first? I mean, I remember obviously, but they don't. The people watching that aren't
Oh, yeah.
us. So what were
Mm.
your first impressions on reading it?
My so I think my first impression on reading it was that um it was strangely disjointed.
Mm,
And actually my very first impression of it was, where's all the stuff about the Olympic spirits?
mm,
I mean, it is there. It is in an aphorism, and it does describe them, and it gives information about princes and stuff like that. But then it just moves on. So there's like a
mm.
paragraph or two about the Olympic spirits, but then it doesn't seem to actually be about Olympic spirits.
Right, right. Yeah.
That was my Yeah, that was my first impression. What was your first impression?
Well, I took it a little bit at a time. I did a very silly thing. I did a video series on another channel called Chicken Philosophy, where I
Mm,
read it and just like it's very disorganized. It's very long. It's where I read the Carl Jung's Black books. So it's these half-hour long episodes where I read a bit and then I'm like sometimes I tell personal anecdotes or crack jokes or am generally disrespectful of what I'm reading and myself and God and everything. And so it's not for everybody. But anyway, so I was on page 12 and then you had told me your impressions on reading the whole thing. So then
mhm.
that kind of informed how I looked at it from there. And I wasn't even realizing that it had anything to do with the Olympic spirits until it got to the Olympic spirits. Um, but yeah, we had talked about how I mean you had said something to the effect of that it basically is saying be a good person, but in 1500s language, be a pious person, do
Yep.
everything in the name of the Trinity and so forth. Be a good Christian. Do everything good Christians are supposed to do, and then the spirits will obey your commands. But it doesn't
Mhm.
say like how to invoke them or why to invoke, or I mean it says why, but like in different ways to invoke them. I mean it says different reasons to invoke them, but not methodology. Um,
Right. Yeah. I have a thing to say about that, but please
yeah,
go
yeah,
on.
yeah. Well, yeah, just that, and then that triggered me to recall how one thing that I've mentioned it on Esoterinerd before was my dad, who was something of an occultist, briefly was possessed by a demon in like 1976 or 77. And the story of that event and how horrifying it was prompted me as a 10-year-old to say, Mom, I want to be baptized because I want God to know I'm on his side in the war between heaven and hell. But don't tell Dad that I'm getting baptized. And so I got baptized in a Lutheran church. And then, so that kind of informed my path going into the occult. I wasn't always on the straight and narrow, but, sometimes anger or whatever would get the better of me and I would uh, act out in a magical way, but then I'd feel guilty about it for years. But when I took the neophyte oath as a 16-year-old, I took it very seriously. I will not do evil magic. I will only use my magic for good end alone and for the divine and, and all this. And the way they taught about how the outer order, you're basically getting to know your higher self, you're purging things out. You learn some methods, but you don't really get into real magic until the second order, when you've already been united with your higher genius, basically, it's formulaically and symbolically anyway, through the
Mhm.
initiations. And so I took that all very seriously as a teenager before I was cynical and jaded and sort of beaten down by the politics and the personalities of the particular group and their human flaws. um,
Mhm.
and so I felt like, well, the Arbatel is definitely in line with that younger Edward that wanted to be a magician of light for Jesus,
Mm, mhm.
but not in like a nerdy, uncool way, like wore a pentagram on my ring and this kind of thing. So I was sort of in an odd place in between. I'd hang out with the Wiccans and they'd be like, yeah, fuck Christianity, and I'd be like, Well, I wouldn't say fuck Christianity, but then go hang out with the church people and they'd be like, magic is the devil. And I'd be like, so there was a sort of in a no man's land in there, but like the whole Golden Dawn order that we came from was right there in that no man's land. So it's no wonder that I became such a devotee of that group.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I had a lot of personal reflection off of it, just from the first impression and from your description of your first impression. So what were you going to say?
Oh, hang on a second. I got to get to it.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, yeah, I agree that basically it's oh yeah, I originally had called it like an anti-grimoire, right?
Oh, right.
Like
Yeah.
like it's not like usually with grimoires, I mean it's supposed to be like, a magical technical manual, right? Where it tells you, okay, you're gonna make this circle and you have to have all these things around, you need
Right.
precise timing.
Yeah.
And you
go to the crossroads, burn 7 candles.
Right. Yeah. And like piety in a very specific way to get to where you want to go, right? But with this, it's almost going against that, or it's turning the pendulum the other way, where it's saying, well, it's saying like knowledge, or what it calls secrets, are contained in God, right? Just like the rest of existence and all of your thoughts and actions. And so if you need those secrets, then go to God, who has access to everything, right?
Right.
And as such, but it like kind of throws the hammer down, right? And it's like if you're really looking for this, then you need a genuine source. And it's almost humble, because it's like, I can't give you the source that you need. Only God can, right? Because it says that like a little bit in a separate place, right? Where it says that magicians are born from the womb.
Right.
Where basically it's like you're either fated to be a magician or you aren't, right? And so so that paragraph actually starts off like pretty fatalistically, and then it says, nevertheless, through diligent study and labor, sure, you can gain something. You
can become a second-tier magician.
You can become a second-tier magician.
You'll never attain the level of someone who's born a magician. Right?
Yeah, and that's like, it's sort of a cop-out, right? Because it's like, well, magicians are born from the womb, right? But
metachlorians or something.
If you try hard enough, maybe you can approach something, right? But it's not actually saying like what these master magicians born from the womb are supposed to be able to do, like separate from these second-tier magicians, right?
Right.
So like somebody reading this would be like, well, I don't know if I was born a magician from the womb. So through diligent study and labor, I'm going to try to like maybe approach what that is, right? And those people might become like truly great magicians in and of themselves, right?
Yeah.
But always see themselves as, well, I wasn't born from the womb this way, so I must
Which
not
might be a good thing, because it'll keep them humble.
Yeah.
So at least there's that, if they're following this as like a scripture, like as a oh shoot, I was going to say something. It said that if you are calling on these spirits and they're doing your bidding, know that you are an ordained magician, and be grateful. Don't be ungrateful.
Oh yeah.
And so that was an interesting thing. Like you've crossed over at that point. Once you're invoking spirits and they are actually listening to you, that means you're a magician.
Yeah. So on the first reading, I was like, this thing is just sort of disjointed, and I don't really understand it yet. The second reading, I was like, oh, I'm starting to understand this now. And then after our conversations in preparation for this podcast, I did a third reading. And with the third reading, I was like, I'm starting to understand, especially because I watched one of your chicken philosophy things, just like right?
Which one?
I think it was the first one, where like you're going up an escalator and you're reading it while you're going up the escalator.
That was the third one, I think. Yeah, in the
Oh, okay,
mall.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I watched like part of that one, but I realized that like when you're reading it, there's a certain like tenor to your voice. There's like
Mm,
this sonorous quality to it.
mm,
And I was like, you could probably treat the Arbatel as a form of scripture, right?
mm.
Like you
Yeah.
could so like just like I don't know if you've ever been to like well, you probably have like been to daily mass before,
Mm.
where like you're
Not
just like
daily,
showing.
but I used to go
Oh,
weekly,
okay.
but
Okay.
yeah,
So if you ever go to daily
yeah.
mass, it's like you just show up. It's a totally different beast than weekly mass, right? Because
Right.
with
Like
weekly mass, you're
Vespers
like
and yeah.
so with weekly mass, like you're showing up and they have this whole to do, right? And you like there's a kiss of peace, and then you receive the Eucharist, and there's probably going to be like coffee and donuts after, right? It's a whole thing, right?
Wine at the one I went to.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
In the
So for
morning.
yeah,
Go home
yeah,
drunk at noon. Yeah.
great. It's
It was
so
Russian Orthodox Catholic, so it was like looks like a Russian Orthodox, but it's actually reporting to the Vatican, sort of a trans thing in that
oh
context.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's where I became
Um
officially Catholic.
anyway, with
Yeah,
daily
yeah,
mass,
yeah,
with daily mass, it's different because they don't have time to do the whole like thing from like shaking people's hands to coffee and donuts.
right.
So they'll have like 15 or it's like a 20-25 minute mass,
Mm,
right? And it just covers everything that they need to cover, and then it's over.
mm,
And during those masses, a lot of the time, churches will like talk about like just like the saint of the day, right? Or they'll talk about like just some piece of scripture that the priest happened to see and
mm,
what he thinks about it. And it's usually like a five
right.
minute lecture, right? What
Mm,
had occurred to me was that your reading of the Arbatel was a lot like
mm,
where
mm,
it's written, especially with Robert Kerner's translation, like it's written in this sort of sonorous way, right?
mm,
Where
mm.
like 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, a group of people could just listen to somebody read from
Right. Yeah, it's like written in Kiev, the King James version of English.
it. Yep. Yep.
Same time period, too. I mean, it was translated 1655. I think the original was published in Switzerland in Latin in 1575, and then it was
Yeah,
translated
something
in
like that.
1655 into English. So
Right.
it
And the cool
had
thing
that very
about it,
Shakespearean quality. Yeah.
yep. Yep. One of the cool things about the Arbatel is that it I don't know if I don't think it explicitly dates itself, but it refers to contemporary literature. And
Mm,
it's the first time that I've seen. I mean, there could be other grimoires that do this that I don't know about. Actually, I think there are like later ones, like in the 19th century. Um, but it's the first one from this period, from 16th century stuff that I've seen that refers to 16th century authors.
right. It's like not trying to make itself seem older than it is, maybe
Yep.
in a way. Yeah.
Yep.
It's being
Huh?
kind of honest. Um, so I mean, okay, the big reveal that the thing that I figured out yesterday, or maybe the day before, I forget, and
Hmm.
then shared it with you, and I analyzed the heck out of it, and it but might as well bring this out early, and then we can continue on various levels talking about it. Is that now for those of you in Golden Dawn or Thelema, hi. Um, yeah, they like Esoterinerd too generally, but anyway, so you guys will be familiar with the path of the flaming sword order of the planets. In other words, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Luna. If you're tracing the path of the flaming sword and you arrive at Chesed, corresponding with Jupiter, then you arrive at Gibora, corresponding with Mars, and so on. So it's the path of the flaming sword sequence of the listing out of the planets. That is how the spirits are named, how they're the order in which they're given, and that is all throughout the Arbatel because it's 7 septenaries with 7 aphorisms each. So they're sort of like chapters and verses. 7 chapters, each with 7 verses. And each verse starts with Saturn, then Jupiter, then Mars, then Sun, then Venus, then Mercury, then Luna. And each chapter, the first chapter is Saturn, the second chapter is Jupiter. And so it's sort of like subtatwas, but with planets instead of elements. So you start with Saturn of Saturn, then Jupiter of Saturn, Mars of Saturn, and you work your way through all the 49 permutations of planets within planets until you arrive at the very last aphorism in the final septenary, which would end with Luna of Luna. And there are at least like 6 different times when a group of 7 things will be listed out in one of the aphorisms, and those are all corresponded the same way. And I went through, and maybe I can give some examples. I've got all my notes right here in my little blue book, and yeah, it's consistent all throughout. For example, every time you get to the one that corresponds with Venus, 99% of the time the keyword is desire, and mind is used often in Luna in the context of like delusion and dealing with that, or sharpening the mind and being philosophical in the case of things that correspond with Mercury. Secrets are always a big emphasis in anything to do with Saturn. Everything is about fatherly in the ones with Jupiter. One particularly interesting one was the Mars of Jupiter. So the Jupiter septenary Mars aphorism is all about how God is a loving father who threatens you with punishment for your own good. That's like very Mars of Jupiter. You can't really get much more Mars of Jupiter than that. So that was an interesting find that helped kind of like shed light on the whole thing, and the whole thing kind of lit up and was no longer disjointed after that. And it made sense. Like, why is it saying this? Oh, because it's Luna of Venus. Oh, of course.
Right. After you told me that, that's when I did the third reading. And with the third reading, like things clicked in like a couple different ways, right? So the first way is that if you read the title, it says an Arbatel of Magick, right? Implying that it is implying that you could have an Arbatel of anything, and this happens to be about magic. And I suspect that that's tied in with your discovery that it's like level after level of sevenfold things, right? And I suspect that Arbatel probably means something akin to a sevenfold exposition, right? And it just happens to be like a sevenfold exposition of magic. That's just a wild guess, though. The thing that stuck out to me when I read it was that the martial aphorisms are the ones that describe like they're the ones that get deeply into spirits themselves, right?
Hierarchies, like military hierarchies.
Yes. Right. The
how big
are
the armies of each one?
Right. Yeah. The other aphorisms, like they're concerned about everything around that, right? Like the theology, the piety, the management of the mind, like all of these different things that are built around the magical workings that it alludes to. So that was the first thing that stuck out. Was once you said that, it was like, oh, look, there's like sevenfold all over the place, and specific planets are talking about specific things, right? And then the other thing that made it make like way more sense is I don't know if you've ever done this before, but if you've ever tried to scry with hierarchical sort of spirits, right? So like a big one that comes to mind for Golden Dawn adepts is we'll start to scry things that are on the Enochian squares, right? And it's like those are like super hierarchical, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those spirits, like their realm, their like jurisdiction, or like their realm of expertise is narrower and narrower, like the further down the hierarchy you go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the things that they have to say are going to be generally related to things that other spirits say, right? But it's limited to their jurisdiction, and it's harder and harder to relate what hierarchical spirits have to say. Like the scryer has to be the one who's like who has all the skill to say, okay, we need to ask this spirit about this particular thing. And when they go off on a tangent about something or other, then we need to rein it back to what this other spirit was saying before. So the scryer also acts as like the organizer of spirit communications. And when a spirit goes off on a tangent, you got to rein it, you got to like try to guide it back to like relevant information.
Right.
When I
Mm-hmm.
read the Arbatel, what it looks like is that sort of thing where like somebody was scrying subplanets of planets, right? And they were picking up on and like each with each one, it was like they were speaking to like a different angel, right? And that different angel just happened to have things to say. And so they wrote down what it had to say. And I think
Mm-hmm.
I get the feeling that the reason why it's so disjointed is because like it's just hard to relate a lot of to relate this stuff together, right? But that gives adepti a way forward, really, because the if you're curious about any one aphorism, perhaps you can try to find a spirit who is interested in that particular hierarchy or is involved in that particular hierarchy and try to get more information. So although the Olympic spirits only show up in like I think one aphorism or maybe two, like perhaps adepti could go back to the spirits involved in those and further elaborate the topic.
Mm. Very interesting. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, what a trip. I mean, and one thing that was kind of fun about a lot of it is how it says, if you want to be an evil magician, go for it. It's a
Oh
free
yeah.
country. You'll be punished. Terrible
Yeah.
things will happen to you. You'll get to enjoy riches. You'll get to
Mm.
enjoy sensual pleasure. It's temporary, of course. That's the nature of corporeal things, and then you'll be condemned to hellfire. Go for it, have fun. It wasn't like saying don't do it. It was saying, yeah, if that's what you want, go for it. But then it was
That's the
advising,
way you're built, then
yeah,
knock yourself out. Wasn't that was at
right.
the Venusian Septenary, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, especially that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
It's just
and
like
then
have a great time, man.
yeah, yeah, and whatever it is that you desire, choose the Olympic spirit that corresponds with the nature of the thing desired, and that's the one you want to talk to. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. So that was a fun aspect to it. But I mean, it was almost like sarcastic, like it
Yeah.
seemed like it, but it was actually saying, well, no, you have free will. You can choose. These are the choices. If you want the best way, it's this, so then it would break down. And at first I was like, what do they mean mean magician? Like mean girls, but I think they mean like middle of the road. So there was like
Yeah.
the greatest magic, the mean magic, and then the lesser magic. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's like evil magic, which is like, I think kind of overlaps a little with lesser magic. Maybe, or maybe not. But let me just give like one example where on one of those tables it talks about the three kinds of magic. Um, yeah, so you can use. Forgive me, I don't. Sometimes I memorized all their names for my practicus test in 1996, but or here I just have the planet symbol. So for the Saturn, Aratron, was that? Arthur?
I think that's the way that they describe it in the
Yeah,
Arbatel,
yeah. Uh,
Aratron.
right. The greatest magic or the greatest secrets you can get from him or it or her, I don't they is cure. You can cure anything in 7 days. And then the mean magic level is the transmutation of metals, and the lesser magic level is money, riches, diligence, and money. And then for Jupiter, longevity is the greatest one. So it's good. I mean, it seems like, well, that's of the core, the body, but it's, I don't know, long life. It's okay. You can ask for that, and without offending God. I think they were saying that you
Right.
can.
Yeah.
The magician of pure heart and good intent who does everything for Jesus can ask this spirit for longevity, and it won't offend God. And then the mean magic is you can cure things with metals and stones and crystals and stuff. And then the lesser magic is like you can elevate your station from lower class to upper class. You can like marry rich. You can trick someone into like, and so that you can, start a family that's in a higher class than you were born into, and things like that. I mean, I'll let people discover it on their own. It's free to find on the internet. You can just search for Arbatel PDF, and you get the whole thing. And with the keys that we've given with the 7 planets and all, you can have an interesting. It's a lot less boring. I have to say, without looking at it through the lens of every verse having to do with a planet within a planet. It's just kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
more of this, but then if you're looking
Yeah.
at it as, okay, well, what do they have to say? Mercury of Venus. That makes sense, even though
Mhm.
it's all kind of a theme, all kind of circling around the same thing, which is like, be good, be a good boy, be humble and grateful, and do everything, pray always, all these. And then there's the 7 scriptures, and that's interesting because those also correspond to the 7 planets. And so
In my
that's fun.
theory of how maybe this was taken from a series of scrying sessions.
Right.
Uh, I surmise that they were speaking to angels every step of the way,
Mm,
which is why it's both as diverse and disjointed as it is, but then also why it's so concerned with virtues, right?
right.
And it's so concerned with alignment. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like
mm.
that's the story of the Arbatel is the story of like
Lawful
making
good,
sure
right?
that you're aligned properly. Like don't screw around with alignment.
Yeah.
Um, there was a oh yeah, okay. There's a couple passages that I like wanted to highlight a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Um, and they're like to me, well, the first one is key, and then the second one is just kind of cool. So this first one is sort of like key to understanding the Arbatel. It says, even as everyone governeth himself, so he allureth unto himself spirits of his nature and condition.
Right. 46, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
one very truly adviseth that no man should carry himself beyond his own calling, lest that he draw unto himself some malignant spirit from the uttermost parts of the earth, by whom either he shall be infatuated and deceived, or brought to final destruction.
Mm, mm.
So the idea is you allure to yourself spirits of your nature and condition.
Right. Yeah.
And that theme is like everywhere in there. I mean, from like page one down. So
Yeah.
in page one, there's a relevant proverb that basically that kind of says the same thing. And
And well
then
beyond the Arbatel, that piece of advice, like if you cultivate anger, if in yourself, if you're an angry person, someone at work just gets on your nerves, and and someone on the freeway, then angry spirits will be drawn to you. you know.
Mhm.
And same with lust, same with, and even, I mean, you know, in Buddhism they would talk about hungry ghosts. I don't know how much of an overlap there would be. Like they crave what they're missing, what they're addicted to. Let's just say heroin,
Mm.
just to make it simple.
Mhm.
Everybody agrees heroin's a bad addiction. If I say lust, people will say, well, now lust is holy, you know, but so, you know, in the Christian 19, in the 1500s, it wasn't, but, you know, anyway. So if you're addicted to heroin, then ghosts that were in their life addicted to heroin are going to start hanging around you and try to get as close to you as possible, so that maybe they can just get a little taste of the feeling that you get when you shoot up, or whatever, however you're administering
Mhm.
it. And so that goes with any vice and virtue. So if you're the sort of person who is altruistic and, you know, do good for others, then the angels will notice and be like, hey, let's hang around Joe Bob there, you know, because we
Mm.
can we
Mhm.
can do good alongside him, and we can help him do good, and thus we're doing good while he's doing good, and we're all doing good. And um, and and so, yeah, that seems to be kind of the essence of what 46 is talking about. But if you're the sort of person who actually is just lusting and taking drugs or something, but then you want to invoke an angel that will give you higher divine wisdom, that you'll have the truest wisdom of enlightenment, and then you'll be able to fool people on Instagram into giving you their money, then you're probably not going to invoke an actual wise spirit from the higher realms. It's probably more likely that it's going to be some kind of trickster spirit, you know, or something, you know, pretending, or you won't get anything at all.
So
Maybe just as an example.
that's a super interesting that's a super interesting way of going about it, right? And it extends a lot into just a general way that magicians are in the world, right? Because like if you notice that in your life you're missing a particular thing, then you can become of the nature and condition of that, of the virtue associated with that thing, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
then the idea is that you attract spirits that are interested in those things, which
right.
it goes back to that principle of this is like one of the first principles I ever learned as an adept. I think it
Mm,
was probably the first one because I went to this whole lecture on it within 24 hours of becoming an adept.
mm,
It was the principle of residency,
mm.
where you are where wherever whatever your condition is, well, it extends to all kinds of
Wherever
things.
your treasure is, there will you find your heart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the but one of the ideas is whatever your condition is, those are the spirits that you're dealing with. You know
Mm,
what I mean? Those are the things that you're working with at the time.
yeah.
Um but residency also it goes very far, right? Like if you, because it goes both ways. Like whatever your condition is, that those are the spirits that you are resident with, right?
Mm,
But then at the same time, if you want to be resident at if you want to be resident with other spirits, then you need to change your condition so that you can be resident with them.
right. Yeah.
And
And
it
I
even
think,
goes, go ahead.
oh, sorry. Oh, well, I was just going to say that in Golden Dawn, the way that some of these things are approached, and that reminds me, we haven't even started talking about geomancy yet, um, but yeah, the way that, at least, I mean, there isn't much in the Golden Dawn materials proper about how to invoke the Olympic spirits. It just says, don't do it. It says, you know, approach with caution, better just stay away from this. But here they are. Good luck. Next page, you know. And so, but
Yeah.
there is a systemic way to, and I think maybe in the context of geomancy, they're approached the same way as the, I want to call them regular planetary spirits. I don't know what else to call them. The ones that fall directly into the hierarchy of divine
Oh,
name,
I see.
archangel,
So yeah, yeah,
angel,
yeah.
intelligence, and spirit. So like Ketebel or Sorath. Um,
Hmm.
and then those are on one hand, and then the Olympic spirits are different. Um, but yeah, so if somebody is wanting to, and this is, I mean, obviously there's like Golden Dawn adjacent paths and paths that sprung off of Golden Dawn, like Thelema, where this advice might ring not good or wimpy or something. Or someone posted a little baby's milk bottle on one of my ritual videos where I was doing the SIRP or something. But anyway, yeah, oh, this is for babies. It's like, okay, whatever, you know. But anyway, what was my point? My point is that you don't go directly to the spirit. If you are a Venusian oriented person and you want to be a mercurial oriented person, or more likely, if you're in the Golden Dawn Order, you're probably a mercurial person who wants to be more Venusian, or wants to be more Martian, or wants to be more something like that. Then yeah, you start with vibrating. Let's say you want to be more of the nature of Jupiter, and then you start. So you start with vibrating L, and or Allah if you're into it. If you know, depending on your accent. No, I'm just kidding. Not kidding at all. But anyway, no. So you start with L, and then move on to Zadkiel, and you start communing with Zadkiel. Try to get a clear connection with Zadkiel, and then once you feel like you have gotten to know Zadkiel, then start working with Hashmalim, and then gradually work your way to working with the planetary angel of Jupiter, the intelligence, and make sure that you've got a clear connection with the intelligence. And then once you've got a clear connection with the intelligence, then for the first time, utter the name of the spirit aloud. I mean, if you're being really careful and kosher about it, and something similar would probably go with the Olympic spirits. So that's what I'd say. I mean, rather than like, well, okay, if this is my nature, then I'm just fucked. I shouldn't invoke anything but things of my own nature. No. You just gradually make yourself a worthy vessel, gradually make yourself a better magician for the sake of calling on the spirit that you want to call on, is what I'd say. And the whole idea of the Golden Dawn system is to get you to the point where you can stand in the column as at one with Yeshua and kind of get in touch with the center of the center of the center, so that you can unfold any ray, any color, any astrological influence. And at that point, then you can call on all of them, any of them, some combination of them, is the idea. Not to say that everybody who goes through the ritual has gone through those processes and can generally do that. Yeah. But that's the idea. It's what it's supposed to represent. Yeah.
That's the same that same idea is in the Arbatel, right? I mean, like you're talking about going to the center of the center of the center of the rose, right? And getting there, and then approaching all of these forces from that center. Right?
Yeah. It says they'll all obey you whether they want to or not if you're walking with the Lord. If you're right there, because they obey him, they'll obey you. But then how much the more so if they want to? That's where it talks about a little bit of that under the Venus heading. Oh, by the way, 46, I was doing the math in my head. That's son of Luna. So the sun aphorism of the Luna septenary.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that's the most concrete of the solar messages, the most lunar, tangible, I guess.
I'm going to try to find the cool quote that the other thing. So there was like that person 46 basically says like what the entire Arbatel says, right? Yeah. But then there's this other one where they're talking about how they say something like it is canon for everyone to know their good angel, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
There's this like whole other. There's another layer of this where like there seems to be some stuff that's assumed that you already know about, or that it's assumed that you're of course going to do this first. And that was one of them. But in the part where they talk about how you should know your good angel, they refer to contemporary literature. and it's almost saying like, for further information, go to this other thing.
Mm.
Um, but I don't remember what the name of the guy is that they refer to, but he's just this Italian guy that was around in the late 16th century, and he just wrote.
Interesting.
He was just a writer. And
Yeah.
there's two books that it refers to. I don't think that they're translated or anything. I'm pretty sure that this guy was a Latin writer.
Mm.
Um, but I would love to find out more about
Dig
that
into
writer
that.
now.
Because he
Just
would
to
have
dig
been an
into it. Yeah.
influence on the author of the Arbatel for sure.
Hmm. Hmm.
One thing I thought was kind of cute is when it talked about the eras that each of the spirits rule,
Oh
and
yeah.
but it ended with 1900 because from their point of view, like why go beyond that? That's so far in the future, no one's gonna even be
No one's
alive
gonna
then,
read this by then. There's gonna be a
Yeah.
meteor or something, and none of
But
this is even gonna exist at that point.
but it very clearly laid out that it was 490-year increments. Each section would be 490. So Bethor, the Jupiter spirit, was to rule from 60 BC or BCE to 430 AD or Common Era. So basically, starting with around the time of Julius Caesar, and then from 430 to 920 was Phaleg. Here's something Phaleg. It's the Wiz Khalifa, but anyway, or another Khalifa. And then Och of the Sun from 920 to 1410, and 1410 to 1900 was Hagith, the spirit of Venus, and then it leaves off there. So following the pattern, one can derive, what's implied is that right now and until from 1900 until 2390 is under Ophiel, which is mercurial, which makes a whole lot of sense
Yeah.
considering everything from man's first flight in an airplane to today with AI and whatever else comes up between now and 2390 is all going to be under the spirit of Mercury. And then after 2390 until 2880, from our perspective, that's so far in the future, no one's even going to be alive then. But someone might be watching this in the year 2400. That's a trippy thing to think about. If so, then your era is under full of the moon, or fool, Phul, not Fool. And then also implied is that before 60 BC, starting in 550 BC, around the time of Lord Buddha, up until the time of Caesar, it was Arathon, the spirit of Saturn. I just thought that would be a fun thing to mention, all that.
I think if you're watching this in the year 2400, well, the one of the perennial truths that I've learned is that like produces like, which means that podcasts produce podcasts. So what I'd like you to do in the year 2400 is produce a podcast that is a response to this podcast, where you can talk about how the Arbatel still applies, or perhaps it does not apply, because you've discovered things that I have not even dreamed of. And
Right.
you found out that you found out the true cause of the Arbatel. You found out the true way that they produced the Arbatel, and you know things that we don't now. Dun, dun, dun. Assuming that you want to be progressive about it, you could also be regressive about it and talk about how you don't know what the Arbatel is anymore.
I mean, I started from a position of like, this is stupid, but then eventually I was like, actually, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I came around. I mean, I had to. I think I had gotten a little bit of rust on my brass. I hadn't polished the brass of my BT-ness. And well, I mean, I've always been a little bit of an asshole and so irreverent and this kind of thing. But I think because when a lot of my friends are friends, a lot of my people that I see what they post on social media are generally secular humanists, atheists, leftists, people who would be very quick to make fun of or criticize anything Abrahamic, and point out the foolishness of our ancestors' ways, and I can relate with that. I can get into that pretty easily, into that state of mind, and kind of like, be irreverent right along with them, and share those jokes as well. And my inner grandma, screaming, "You're gonna go to hell," deep down somewhere inside, but my dad up toward the front going, "Ha ha ha, that's a good one," and anyway, so I had to kind of like clean some of that out and go, let's get into the space where I can take this seriously, or let's get into the space where I can treat this as something other than just a bunch of stupid 16th century, I mean, it seems like they were part of maybe the early Protestant movement, which itself was still very Catholic in Northern Europe at that time, not really recognizable
Yeah.
from a present day American, Protestant perspective. But
I think that there's a veiled, yes, there is in aphorism. Oh no, never mind. It's
they
in the
used the word
preface.
Protestant, I think, at one point in.
Yes, so Robert Turner does. He says, I
Right.
incite the reader to a charitable opinion hereof with a Christian protestation of an
Right.
innocent purpose therein.
Yeah.
In other words,
to protest the innocent purpose of this magic that would be deemed satanic by traditional.
right, exactly. And he could just simply mean simply mean like I protest the innocence of what I'm doing.
Right, right.
But he could also have a deeper meaning
Yeah.
of in the overall Protestant spirit of being more tolerant of other people's opinions of Christianity. I am presenting this topic.
Right. Yeah,
And
that's true.
This was included. The Arbatel was included it was called the Isagoge, and it was included in the fourth book of occult philosophy.
Oh, okay.
So there was this, and if you kind of look at the Arbatel as this, if you look at it like through an Agrippan lens, like a lot of the alignment stuff makes a lot more sense, because the idea being that from an Agrippan sense, like, of course, there's the three books, there's three worlds, right? There's the super celestial, the celestial, and the mundane. The super celestial is the world of God, the world of the angels is the celestial world, and then the world that you're sitting and breathing and pooping in is the mundane world, right? And the idea is, if you want to change something in the mundane world, you got to go to the celestial world to do it. And then to have any authority in the celestial world, you need to be one with the super celestial, So it all goes back to this idea of go back to God.
Call the divine name first. Yeah.
Yes, right. And once you really start to dig into the Arbatel, you start to see that, hey, there's a lot of the core principles of this, made it all the way to the 1880s, 1890s.
Right. Definitely the Arbatel is among the major influences on the development of the Golden Dawn, I'd say. And that makes me want to bring up geomancy, because in the way that geomantic divination is taught in the practicus, don't worry, I'm a chief and I gave us permission to talk about this, is you do, there's the shield method, of course, which is nicer than the square, I think. But anyway, at the top, you're supposed to do a circle, a pentagram, and do the sigil of the Olympic spirit. I'm pretty sure.
And the pentagram, I think, is supposed to be an invoking pentagram of whatever element is associated with it.
And I think they're supposed to run through at least the divine name, and a little bit of the hierarchy of the sephira of the planet, and then
the planet. I was always such a nerd. I would go through the whole hierarchy. I know some people will skip bits of the hierarchy, maybe just do the divine name, the angel, and then the spirit, or the intelligence and the spirit. But I would run through the whole hierarchy of the Sephira and the whole hierarchy of the planet, and in order to get the message, in order to ask a question related to Venus or related to Mercury or related to the moon. Then you do the dots and so on and so forth, and the instructions are out there. I don't need to go through every step, but yeah. So the main idea of the way that this is presented in the Arbatel is the spirits are there for you to ask questions to, and then they'll give you the accurate answers to the questions. And geomancy is supposed to be a very accurate and specific way of getting an answer to a very specific question in the form of the geomantic figures, which are very fun. And I'm sure every Golden Dawner just loves geomancy more than any other aspect of the Golden Dawn, right? Can you hear my facetiousness in my voice? It's probably generally, I'd say, most people's least favorite thing in all the grades, but
yeah, I don't. I can think of one adept, maybe.
Right.
I can think of one adept that was like really into geomancy for a while.
Sorby, yeah. Oh, well,
was she really? Oh, okay. Then
she was
two.
Yeah, she was sort of taken as like an oracle of it, and she was hardcore Catholic too. So you know, so I think she was right there in that Arbatel sweet zone of having dominion over the spirits of divination, and these particular spirits of divination. But
wow.
But I know Tabitha has a lot of interesting insights. I mean, you know, things I've heard. I think in self-initiation. I mean, I'm a little old, so I think that has a new title now. Has for the past 15 years or so, but I've forgotten that. But the old one was self-initiation into the Golden Dawn. And there was a chapter on geomancy where she talked about a lot of like very subtle tricks of like following the message around from the what sign rules, or what planet rules the sign that geomantic figure is in, and then what other geomantic figure is ruled by that planet, and where is that, and what's the relationship between them, and then so you get very specific and detailed.
I think in the fourth book, coincidentally, I think in the fourth book there's an essay, like there's a treatise on geomancy, and it gets into that kind of thing.
In the fourth book of occult philosophy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The relation between geomancy and astrology.
Oh, okay, cool.
There was some other guy too, whatever, but those ideas have a lot of there's a lot of historical grounding in it.
Yeah. So this ends up being this project of you and I doing this research to put this episode together is kind of like filling in some of the gaps of our practicus studies, that things that weren't very interesting at the time, probably, you know, in practicus. There were aspects of geomancy I found fun, like spotting the geomantic figures in clouds, and you know, and just, you know, throwing some coins at the ground and going, "Oh, look, it's Carcer," and it's you know, and all these different things. Or when you're really mad at someone and you put Carcer around them, or you want them to go away, and you go, "I miss you, I miss you." No, I'm not going to do it. There were these. I think they were. I think we assumed they were Nigerian. Do you remember? Did you ever get to have the privilege of hearing the very loud church that went on in the warehouse space next to? There was our cult, and then there was another cult that was next to us.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember this at all.
The managers or whatever of the industrial warehouse area by TA Truck Stop off Milliken, off the 10 freeway. decided to put the two weirdo, renters right next to each other, and they were so
Yeah.
loud. And they would of course always get together on Saturday night, just like us. And there'd be,
Mm.
a guy with a microphone, and but by the way that they were scowling at us, like sometimes they would come outside at the same time we would, and they'd all be kind of very well dressed and looking at us, like we were the devil or something. And so, but
How
yeah,
did I
sometimes
miss that?
they,
I totally wish I was there for that.
we'd be trying to get into, I want to say getting into character. I used to do acting, but get into god form, getting ready for
Okay.
for a neophyte initiation. I'm sitting there as the Hyrus, and then they'd be next door. I don't want to imitate, it's in poor taste. Back then was before a
Mm-hmm.
lot of political correctness took root in all of our collective minds, and so back then I would imitate the African preacher. But you can imagine, yeah, I think you can hear
I
it,
can.
the African preacher. And so I'd stand up, walk over to the northern wall, and then do a big amisio. And then do like an earth banishing pentagram, like get the fuck out, And then we ended up leaving. So, it's like sometimes you push hard enough, you push yourself away,
Mm-hmm.
Get out, it's my house. Oh, I guess I'm leaving.
What's there? What's over there now?
Oh, and I don't know what's in that warehouse. A mutual friend of ours from Sweden went there and took pictures. He took a picture of like, hey, look, I'm standing by the door of the old temple.
Yeah.
But I don't know what was there. They later, we had moved to another warehouse area, a warehouse space in Baldwin Park that was bigger. And it was it had like a second level, so there was like stairs that went up to a classroom, and there was windows, and it was actually kind of nice. But then we had a terrible schism where 90% of the order left ISIS and RZ, and so suddenly we couldn't pay rent. And but half of the cosigners were in the other part of the schism, so it was a mess. So we were all having to collect money, and it's like, well, if you want the temple to survive, then you should give us your money. And it's like, well, I was in favor of the people who left. I think they had a lot of good points about how fucked we are here. And it's like, well, the chiefs of that temple are going to be fucked if we don't pay the rent too, because they're co-signed on our lease. So if you don't want the Chicago temple to be fucked, then you should donate to the ISIS temple so we can pay the rent so that they're not fucked. It's just like a mess. So like a bad divorce, kind of thing.
Yeah, it is exactly like that.
Yeah. March 2011, that one. So that was Baldwin Park. It was a nice physical space. A lot of weird things happened in that physical space, but the space itself was nice. And there was a Taoist, I want to say Taoist Buddhist. I think it was Taoist Buddhist, or maybe just Taoist with some Buddhist, influence. Cult that was in not exactly the same space, but it was an identical group of warehouse spaces across the street from us. And we didn't know it was there. But later, after I had left and I became a yoga teacher, and then I decided to teach like LBRP and middle pillar and Tibetan, like a Tibetan practice with the chakras in a workshop on the weekend at the yoga studio, the hot yoga studio where I was working. And one student came, and he was a guy, he was a Taiwanese guy, but born in the US. And he was from that other cult. So he invited me to his cult. And that was fun. Yeah. Because it was like, it's cool. The same space, same physical space. I'm familiar with the layout, but I think theirs was bigger. They had like two that were connected or something like that. So yeah.
This reminds me of something that happened recently. As you probably very well know already, I'm in this process of like just kind of like rebuilding my whole like mundane life. Like there was
Yeah.
aspects, there was just aspects of things happening that were just, they just weren't working anymore. And so,
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, well, we need to rebuild all this stuff, and so I did that, and I was working with a very specific um angel to like kind of help to guide the whole process and everything, right? And he did, everything went great. It everything went much better than I would have expected given the amount of effort that I put into like contacting this angel and like doing all this stuff. Like it wasn't casual, but at the same time it wasn't like, it was just a thing that I did, like, and a thing that I would go back to. But every ceremony was like maybe 15 or 20 minutes long. Like it wasn't a big deal, but like so many things happened from that. Anyway, I went back to that spirit and he was like, okay, we have everything in place. Like everything's working great. There's only one thing that you're missing now. And I was like, what's that? And he was like, you need a spiritual community. When you go to your new place, you're going to have to find a spiritual community. And I was like, what kind of spiritual community? And he was like, I'm not going to tell you what kind of spiritual community I have. You have whatever you want, but I want you to have one because I just want you to have a community. I don't want you to be alone. I don't want you to be alone when you're out there because he was concerned that. So my wife is coming with me, I promise. She's getting the house ready now, and the movers are going to come later this week, and then after that, everybody's going to come. So pets, my wonderful wife, everything's on its way. But for now, I'm here by myself. And he was like, you got to find people. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. So I was like, well, what kind of community do I want? Like that was he like pretty much threw the gauntlet down, and he was like, I'm not gonna like live your life for you. Like you go on a quest, like go find your spiritual community, get out there, And so I was like, what kind of, like, if I could find any community at all, right? And I just had like a completely fresh start, what would I want to find? And I was like, let's try for like the first thing I went to, the first thing that I went to was I was like, what if I could find like voodoo? Like what if I could find like people who were interested in that tradition, right? So I found this place called Kansas City Conjure. But I went over there and they were like totally closed. Like everything online said that they were open. And then like if you call them and ask for their hours, then they're gonna say that they're open. But when I went over there, like it was closed. Like there was dust on there was like dust on the front door. Like nobody had been there for a long time. So I gave them a call, nobody answered, and I haven't heard from them since. So I was like, okay, fine. Like I'm supposed to be on this quest to find the community. Apparently the community's not there. So then I was like, what if I tried to find so I've always been like really interested. I've always been interested in Zen, like Japanese Buddhism. But I've never really had a chance to explore it really, right? So I was like, what if I could find like a Japanese Zen community? That would be awesome, right? So I looked for that and I couldn't find it like at all. Like it just wasn't there. Like and I looked for a couple different places and I looked, okay, maybe it's in Missouri, nothing. And so I was like, okay, fine, right? So then after all that, what happened? I was just like driving around and I saw an Episcopal church. And I was married in an Episcopal church, right? And I have like real ties to the Episcopal church.
My old proctor is an archbishop. I won't say his name or where he's an archbishop for his privacy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'll just say AKHV, Esoterinerd, episode 20 something. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
So I was driving by an Episcopal church and I was like, okay, I mean, I don't like to whenever I'm going on a quest like this, I don't like to say, no, that's too familiar or that's too uninteresting. Like when you do stuff like that, then you never find anything because the
Yeah.
uninteresting and the dull is sometimes that's what you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
So I pull up, I like drive up, I get out of the car, and they're like, hey, they were like, are you new here? Did you move here? And I was like, yeah. And they said, that's great. So then they gave me like banana bread and they were like, come on in. We're watching the Chiefs right now and we're eating chili. Do you want chili? Are you hungry? And I was like, yeah, I'm hungry. And they were like, just come in. We're gonna have food, right? And then they were like, come back next weekend. We're gonna have more food. We're gonna have a newcomers luncheon. And I was like, why are you guys eating so much? And they were like, well, Jesus ate all the time. So come on in. Yeah. So I found my spiritual community. I don't even know
How
like why I was
fun.
telling the story, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great. Well, yeah, it was the way the angel had said to do was
Right.
find, yeah, yeah, in the new
Right.
place. Hmm.
Yeah. He said, go find a community. And I didn't really think that he meant like go find a spiritual community,
Right.
go to find a monastery on a mountain and go forth for the next 7
Yeah.
years. Like, he wasn't
Yeah.
saying, he was just saying like, just go find people to hang out with, please.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I did.
How interesting. Wow. Very cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think in my journey, you know, we she had experience in an Osho commune when she was younger, and
Oh yeah.
I had experience in a Golden Dawn order, as you know, and so we're both like solo practitioners at this point, where
Hmm.
it's like we notice communities and we go, that seems like it would have its benefits and also be too culty for my taste. But you know,
Hmm.
we sort of observe the different communities. Like in Goa, the two of the big ones are you know, the old Portuguese Catholic. I mean, they threw off the Portuguese, but they kept the Catholicism in especially South Goa, but all throughout Goa. Like I think it's 50% of the Goans are Roman Catholic, and
Wow.
yeah, it's a fascinating history of Goa. I recommend a
Mm.
deep dive one day. They unfortunately had an inquisition too, but um, and then in North Goa, there's the hippies all flooded in the '60s, and of course they were rejecting a lot of Western things. I mean, the Vietnam War, and then LSD was opening them up to new ideas, and so they were kind of like third eye wide open from the LSD, and then smoking some weed, and then let's be Hindu. And so, but they're a different kind of Hindu than like the Hindus in India, you know.
Yeah.
So there's that community or those communities in North Goa. There's like the basically white people that are doing yoga and you know, being anti-vaxxers and collecting crystals, you know what I mean? And it's kind of, so I kind of observe them from a distance, like, okay, that exists, that's there,
Hmm.
you know. Is it
Hmm.
like they'll and it's interesting how they'll be the physical spaces of Hindu temples. They'll have certain things where the you know, a lot of people from other states, after, because Goa was separate from the rest of India for from the 1400s until the 1960s. And then after the 1960s, India was like, okay, we're going to take, everybody was decolonizing, and India's like trying to talk to Portugal, like, so we get Goa, right? And Portugal's like, no, you know. So finally, India was like, okay, we're going to take it. And Portugal was like, you can't. And then India took it. And then Portugal was like, hey, NATO, you remember how we're supposed to back each other up when people try to take our land? Well, India just took Goa. And NATO was like looking at each other like, okay, Portugal, you know, like, I think we're going to not do anything about that. And Portugal was like,
Hmm.
and so that's how that went. And so so people, Hindus from other states in India all moved into Goa, so there's
Mm,
a substantial Indian Hindu population there as well. And so so there's newer Hindu temples and old churches, like hundreds of years old churches, and then 50-year-old and 70-year-old and 10-year-old Hindu temples. And so there'll
wow.
be local, like Maharashtrian or different communities generally from who migrated from other states a generation ago or more recently, who practice at these temples. And then on Tuesday night or whatever, the hippies will show up, and it's like they have their agreement with the keeper of the temple. They pay whatever fee, and it's all very official. And then they gather around, and then they do Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna, but they're banging on drums, and they're doing, I don't think they're overtly smoking weed in the temple, but they're going out to their scooter or their car to do that, and just enjoying themselves. And and I know that goes on. It's just not for me, like a younger me would have been all over that. And I used to
Yeah.
hang out with those same types of people in California, when I was younger. And that was a community that I liked very much, especially before I started to realize how little, I mean, when things started to polarize and get so divided. um, I used to think 100% these are my people, but then once, like, half of them were like for Bernie and the other half were for Trump, and then it was 70% of them are anti-vaxxers and all this other stuff. I'm like, who are these people? I kind of hate these people, but these are my people, and
Mhm.
yeah, I have more in common with them than anyone else. People from California who love Buddhism and Hinduism and that kind of thing, and weed, to be honest. Um, but I don't relate with a lot of them, and I keep my distance from them. And then at the same time, I went through that period in my 20s where I was like hardcore Catholic, singing in the choir and everything. And Pew loves Christianity. I mean, like, not exclusively. That's the thing with Christianity, is a lot of the especially traditional, like, Catholic conservative folks, like, they'll look at you funny when you start to be like, yeah. And also Buddhism, they'll be like, okay, you don't understand. it's Jesus and no one else. It's
Oh
not
yeah.
not spiritual polyamory. I'm married to Yeshua and also Shiva, like, and so you have to kind of keep that part to yourself. And I don't really want to be a pretender and be keeping to myself. Like, I can show them I got a cross tattoo, but don't come over to my house and see my 500 Vajrayana Buddhist statues, or it'll freak you out. So it kind of puts me again in that sort of same similar position that I was in as a teenager, where I'm neither here nor there. I'm not really
Mm,
part of the hippie Hindu camp or the Catholic camp, but
hmm
Goa seems to be the best fit for us,
hmm hmm
in all of India. And
you're
it's an oddball place, and the oddball is close enough. Like, that's
yeah,
totally,
yeah.
you can be an
You're
oddball.
you're at a nexus, right? I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
anybody who gets deeply enough into anything realizes that there are parts of this that really resonate with them, and there are parts of it that have nothing to do with them, right?
Yeah.
And you um you can, and at first it's like a lot of people are just like, oh, this isn't for me because not everything resonates with me.
Mm,
Not everything resonates with everybody,
right.
right?
And if it
um
did, that's called, like, scary. Like, if everybody's
yeah, like
marching to the
why?
same drum, run.
Right,
Like,
right,
that's
yeah.
that's the worst kind of, like, fascism or cultiness. You got the
Because I
same
mean,
uniform
because the
and
thing is, um I've been thinking about this a lot lately, about how um there's a certain amount of naturalism that's sort of healthy to keep around, right?
mm,
Like you're you're a unique part of nature, right?
mm,
Like outside of what any particular culture has to say, right? Outside of
mm,
what, like, European culture has to say, outside of what outside of what Japanese culture might have to say, outside of what Indian culture has to say, right? Because all culture is just a way for humans to relate to the
Each
unknown, right?
other. Yeah,
To
yeah.
relate to each other, to relate
Themselves
to the
even.
unknown,
Yeah.
to relate to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
other, right?
Oh,
And so
Terrence
that
McKenna said it's an operating system.
it's
That
an operating system,
you're the
exactly.
hardware and the culture is the operating system, and culture is
Right.
not your friend. I love Terrence McKenna, but anyway, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like you have these various systems to really relate to the other, right? But
Mm.
you you are not that system. You are none of those systems, right? And so you're
Mm.
free at any time to just like
Mm.
float in amongst all of these things and to
Mm.
act as a nexus for anyone.
Mm.
Because you're a natural
Linux and
object, just like the
Mac.
sky, just like
Yeah,
just like the
yeah.
rocks that make up the earth. You're a natural thing.
Very cool. I like that. Well, that's good. I'm glad you found some folks. I think you could probably be a little polyamorous in Kansas if you do find other folks and
Yeah,
yoga
that's
and
true. Like
meditation
if
and
I like when I eventually find my Zen folks, I could totally still hang out with them.
yeah. And I'm sure there's some kind of yoga is so all pervasively popular these days that there's
Mhm.
surely going to be a yoga class where you can like talk to the teacher afterward, like so where's the real stuff going on? When how do I get on the WhatsApp? Do you guys use WhatsApp yet in America?
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's I don't know if it's a okay. In America, in America, you have like people that are from like generations of America, right? And
Mm,
probably those people don't use WhatsApp. But then the
right.
constant influx of people
New
from other countries
folks.
who move to
Yeah.
America, they're
They
taking
all
WhatsApp
use
with
WhatsApp. Yeah,
they all
yeah.
use WhatsApp, exactly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so when my wife and I, a couple of years ago, we went to Indonesia, we started to use WhatsApp for,
Mm,
to talk to our new Indonesian friends. And since then,
yeah.
like, use it all the time.
Yeah, so you can get on the WhatsApp group invite list for the cool like meditation stuff going on Saturday night at yoga teacher Sarah's house, or whatever. I
Mhm.
don't know if that exists in Kansas, the equivalent of that. I
There, I
mean, if
mean,
you're in a city in Kansas, then surely it must be, depending on the size of the city. But
yes, there's a yoga studio right down the street. I
oh
actually
yeah.
I walked by it to get this coffee.
Oh, sweet. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That might be a good, I mean, like it's an odd, I mean, it's a pseudo spiritual. I don't want to say it's pseudo spiritual. It's very spiritual. Yoga, real yoga is very spiritual. I mean, I've lost touch with the meaning of the word spiritual, but yoga itself comes from the Shramana traditions. Are you familiar with that? The
No.
so in BC 600
Mhm.
there were like 62 different Shramana sects, and these were people who had a lot of things in common. There were a lot of different variations, but three main examples you can point to are Buddhism, Jainism, and basically yoga. Um, and these three all practice nonviolence, which is called ahimsa, um, brahmacharya, which means keeping it in your pants, basically, if you're a hardcore devotee of the path. But they usually would have lay people that, of course, get married and have children, but are kind of followers of the teachings and things like that. And keep clean. Wash your house, wash your hands, this kind of thing. Like they have like a lot of their main 10 rules in common, and then maybe a slightly different emphasis beyond that, like I mean, but only slightly. With yoga, you practice your concentration and sense withdrawal and breath techniques and meditate, and then the goal is some not samsara is basically nirvana or mukti, liberation from the material and the cycle of birth and death. Same with Buddhism, same with Jainism. So these were called the Shramana traditions that were kind of older than what we now think of as Hinduism. The
Mm,
worshiping of gods like Shiva and especially Kali came more in the tantric movement, and Ganesh, and like they all have their periods in history where they became popular, and then all kind of uh, and then the Vedas kind of came. Well, this is a little bit of a controversial thing to say, but they came with the ancient Iranians, who came down into after the Indus River Valley civilization had dried up and the Dravidians had kind of gone south. Um, they came and they brought Sanskrit with them, and the Vedas, and basically the foundation for what we think of now as Hindu religion. But separate from that, also part of ancient Indian tradition was yoga. So is it spiritual? Well, what is spirit? Spirit is an English word that's derived from a Latin word that's derived from something else, and it has to do with breath. And so it's like, it depends on who's defining spirit, what it even means. I mean, like
mm,
the spirits we're talking about, the Olympic spirits, has nothing to do with that.
yeah.
The Holy Spirit, well, I mean, that's like an unfathomable mystery. If it by definition has to descend from the Abrahamic father god, the ancient Zeus Pater, the sky god, the or whatever it was, then no, it's not that. It's completely different from that. But spiritual, I think today means everything that's not like atheist, ephemerally based, science and reason based, anything that someone holds as valuable or true that cannot be measured in a test tube, becomes spiritual or religious or something. And religious,
Mm.
I guess, means more like something organized or based on rituals, where spiritual is the other category. And I don't know. So I mean, when I was young, I thought I knew what spirit or spiritual meant, and now that I'm 45, I've lost my ability to really coherently define it.
Yeah, I don't know what it means either. I mean,
Yeah.
usually when I'm talking about when I say the word spiritual, like I'm referring to something that relates to spirits, right? Like I don't know how to describe them. Like non-material entities that have
Right.
methods of communication with you and that can
Sure.
also help you to do stuff, right? Like that's what I
Metaphysical,
mean.
paranormal. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right. So that's what I mean by spiritual. But like outside, but that's like that's it's not an abuse, but it's a very technical use of the top of the word, right?
Oh,
And
like
like
spiritualism. That was kind of what that was about, is
right.
seances and all that.
Yeah, yeah. So like that's usually what I mean when I say spiritual, right? But outside of that, there's this whole concept of uh, like you said, a non-materiality, right?
Mm.
Of a yeah, of non-materiality. And that's like the
Yeah.
closest that I can get to saying like what spiritual means, you know?
Like the only, like, because as far as yoga goes, or I mean, frankly, Buddhism for the most part, um, the only point at which it can be categorized as spiritual is the point where it says, if you attain this perfect peace that comes from, a certain kind of physical exercise and mental discipline and emotional control, then you don't have to compulsively reincarnate after death. That's the point where it's like, oh, you're talking about woo woo, oh, you're talking about something. But other than that, if you just sort of omit that part, it's like, well, what is it? It's a practice where you do stretches, deep breathing. And then there's sort of a community aspect to it, because you're all
Yeah.
getting together. You're in a room full of people that are all doing stretching and deep breathing. And you know like a person can perv out with it and kind of go to yoga to like check out the yoga pants or whatever. But if you approach it in a more wholesome light, the brahmacharya, like the way it's intended to, or at least in the ancient form is intended to, when it was all Indian guys, basically, um Now it's like, yeah, you can walk in and more often than not, you'll be the only guy in the yoga class. So it's like a
Mhm.
little, can sometimes a little awkward. In Southern California, it was more mixed, but usually less than half male. When I went for my teacher certification, I was the only guy in a class of six with a female
Mhm.
teacher.
Mhm.
So it was a little awkward, but well, it's fine,
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's an interesting journey. Has its ups and downs. I think the only thing that left a sour taste in my mouth about it was I went into it thinking, projecting too much positivity onto it. I went into it
Hmm.
thinking that these are great, wonderful, perfect people, and then it turned out that they have just as much ego and like politics and stuff going on as any other human,
Mhm.
and when they get organized, they're just as weird as any other organized group. Um,
Mhm.
but they're a fine community. They'll have different things to offer than I think the Episcopalians. But the Episcopalians seem real down to earth and just kind of like, hey, we're watching the game, yeah, welcome. Like they're not like,
Yeah.
welcome in Christ. They're like, it's just sort of assumed. You're like, oh, you're
Right.
American, yeah, okay, yeah, that means you're Christian. Okay, let's watch the
Yeah.
game. Have some chili. Like,
Yeah. 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 No, that's actually good to know. I didn't consider something like, well, just go to a yoga studio
yeah, just to
and
go beginner class and
yeah.
just kind of check it out and say, yeah, I just moved into town and I got a friend who's a yoga teacher. He moved to India. He's so hardcore about it, or whatever. I don't know. You can, if you want to, yeah, how
He
hardcore it
lives in
used to
India
be.
somewhere. He wanders like an ascetic between New Delhi and
Yeah,
Goa.
I think he's in the Himalayas, sitting on a mountaintop. I watched. Now India is a funny thing. There was this. I was watching like a TikTok reel or something before
Mm.
they banned TikTok in India. I don't know if you know about that. China, there was a skirmish on the border, and China was trying to take some Indian land, and then there was a
Oh,
skirmish, a big fight. They both armies had agreed not to use guns, and so they had like baseball bats with nails in them and stuff, and they were beating the crap
whoa.
out of each other, and a bunch of people died. And so India banned TikTok. It's like, oh yeah, no more TikTok in India. And so, but on a YouTube reel or something where you see the little TikTok thing in the corner, because there's VPNs. But anyway, so there's like this thin, very serious looking Indian man wearing like I forget what it's called. It looks like a big diaper. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but like nothing up here, and long hair, and walking up to the top of this mountain in up above Rishikesh. It's like a mountain named after Shiva, and there's like a little shrine there, and there's like a little the trident. I forget what it's called in the Sanskrit word for that. It's the same as the trident, but it's a Shiva thing. And there's like maybe some Tibetan flags there. And he, puts his hands together, and then he starts to do his yoga, except then suddenly it's sped up with some kind of R&B track.
Wow.
On the top of a sacred mountain with like fog down there, so it's kind of like, this is also Earth. It's like there are parts of it that resemble the India in your head, but they've also been, experiencing the past several decades along with everyone else. And so, like, again, if you go into it with an expectation, if you go into anything with an expectation, then you'll be disappointed. But if you go into anything with just fresh eyes of like, I don't know what this is going to be like, what will it be like, then it can be, always interesting, always
You know,
pleasant even.
yeah, that's very, yeah, yeah. That's what like, that's what 2023 sort of taught me is, I was really comfortable for like most of my life, right? Like I had like, I basically just came from this like working class background, right? Where, like
Mm.
as long as you have a job, then you're probably gonna have health insurance, and everything's just going to be fine. So like the place that you're going to get money for your next meal, the place that you're going to get money to keep your house and stuff like that's all going to be fine, right? And so there was this, and so because of that, there was this certain amount of my mind was free to plan the future, right? But since my mind was free to plan the future, I would often become obsessed about the future.
Mm.
Or I would become obsessed about things that were not happening directly in front of me, right?
Mm.
When I started to get uncomfortable enough that I was like, okay, I gotta change things. When I started to get uncomfortable, I didn't know what was coming next. I didn't know what was coming in the future. That was that was like really uncomfortable because like my whole life had always been like just the basics are going to be there. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And when the basics were threatened, then it was like, oh, I'm not going to have this. Or I don't know if I'm going to have this or not.
Mm.
Right. And so, but when I didn't know, suddenly I had to pay attention to the present.
Mm.
And all of us, like that changed everything because then when I had nothing to obsess about, then I was like, oh, everything's happening right now. So that when I was in that state, then I come to this brand new place and it's like everything's happening right now. This is amazing, you know? And so like all these new things start happening, all these new things come along, and it's just this thing about staying in the present. And I had all of these distractions that come with being comfortable, you know?
Mm. Yeah.
I love these conversations because I never know why we're talking about any particular thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, we like I don't know that people who watch my other programs and pay attention to the background might be like, so where is he? Like oh, I'm not at home, but I do happen to be in my old bedroom from 2019 when I after I packed up all my stuff and said my goodbyes, my final goodbyes, and then left with the intention of, okay, now I'm gonna marry Priyal and stay in India forever. This was my bedroom. She was busy while I was in California. She was setting up this flat and this room, and this is where I'm registered, where I live. And so hence when it came time where I was like, enough is enough, I need a driver's license and I need this particular kind of ID so I can open a normal bank account in India. It's been 6 years. This is ridiculous. So I had to come here because this is where I'm living. I mean, on the record. So that's why I'm in Delhi. And right now, it's the most polluted city on the planet.
Wow.
Because in up north in Punjab, a bunch of farmers all burn their dry crops at the same time to make the fields fertile for the next crop. And so yesterday we were up to 999 because it doesn't go up higher than that. 600 being hazardous, 700 being like very hazardous, like 400 being very poor, 300 being poor, 200 being like, it's okay, you can go jogging, like we were at 999. And so like you might have noticed a frog in my throat and all this kind of thing. And so what was the point of my bringing up any of that? So I'm in Delhi right now, but I live in Goa. And we were noticing, because we were living in Delhi for a year and a half, taking care of my OCI, so that I was able to stay here forever, basically, so I could have the closest thing to an Indian citizenship that I can have without renouncing my American citizenship. And so once we got that, then we were like so sick of all the noise, the traffic, the pollution. We were like, we want to go back to Goa, but not North Goa. We're going to go to South Goa, where there's no tourism, there's no tourists, there's just the local Goans going to church, being simple, and there's like tropical and beaches and So then we found this one area where, and everybody said, well, you probably want to be in this part of town where there's restaurants and where there's like stuff going on. And we're like, no, we want to go to that other part of town where there's nothing, just crickets. And it's like technically a village. And they're like, yeah, but there's no Wi-Fi there. There's no way to get Wi-Fi there. And we're like, we don't care. We want to live over there. And so the place where we live, like we open up the windows and it's just trees. Like there's no neighbors in two of the directions from where we're staying. It's just trees. And we have this nice big balcony and it's just this great view, just nothing happening. Like within, like you can see really far and you can clearly see that there are 7 human beings within this great area, you know, where right now there's probably 100 human beings like within 20 feet of where I'm sitting right now. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but this building probably has 100 people in it. And so Delhi is very different from Goa. So we went to another extreme, and then that prompted the need for a car, because then we're like, okay, well, we can't go anywhere. So we got into walking. And then we were like, okay, we need to walk. And then we discovered that because there are no people there, the dogs think it's their land. There's like all these stray dogs, or dogs that technically are assigned to houses, but they act like stray dogs. And there's like stray dog gangs, and they're kind of aggressive. And I was like, for a long time, I'm like telling Pew, like, they don't bite, you know, like, because I'm like thinking like in America, if a dog bites, then, you know, bye bye doggy. It's really sad, but that's the way that it's dealt with in America. But you know, so then at a certain point she Googles it, and it was like, one of the biggest problems in Goa is all the stray dogs and how often they bite people. And I'm like, oh fuck. So then that was the final you know, push toward getting a car. But yeah, my point was kind of in line with what you were saying, was when there's nothing going on. It's I was joking that it was a little bit like The Shining, because it's like it's her and me and this nice size space and wind in the trees and like, you know, crickets. And so there's like so much space for your brain to like worry about things and to like, you know, like obsess about things, to over plan and, you know, all this other stuff. But then as soon as we come to Delhi, there's like 5 people just in this flat, you know, right now. I mean, I know them all, you know, like they're close friends and, you know, good friends at this point. When I went to take my driver test her best friend's brother, you know, it went with me, and we didn't have a car. Like they were like, "Where's your car?" And we were like, I thought that they were bringing a car, and they're like, "We told you to bring a car." And we're like, "You definitely didn't tell us to bring a car." And so there was a guard there who was like, "You can use my car." And I was like, "Thank you so much, sir." And but then he let someone else use his car, so they said, "You can't use the same car that he used." And so Maha, who's in the next room, just went out through the back of like the Indian DMV and out through the front, out to the street. There's like this overpass and there's this dirt road, and he just flagged down a random car and was like, "Hey, I'll pay you 1,000 rupees if you let us use your car for like an hour." And the guy's like, "Okay." So he drives up in the shittiest possible car you can imagine. And so that was when I failed my driver's test. And
you failed the driver's test?
The first time around. And
what
so
happened?
Well, it's an automated track. So what happens, because like they have so many fatal accidents in India and in Delhi, that they've instituted this very strict system to make sure that people who get driver's licenses can actually drive well. And so it's like actually more difficult than passing the driver's test in the US. Maybe. I mean, because for one thing, there's a long backwards winding road that you have to navigate going backwards without touching the lines on either side. And that's how the test starts. And so some people don't get past that. And like,
yeah, that's hard.
Yeah. Once you touch the line like 3 times, then they're like, your test is over, you failed, and then you have to wait a week before you can take it again, and you can only take it 3 times per year or something like that. So it's a little bit like a little strict, but with wiggle room. And then you have to simulate an overtake or like pass somebody, but it's just you know. What are they called? Cones or whatever, like these things sticking up, and then you like put on your turn signal and pass the imaginary car. You do a figure 8, and you have to use your turn signal at certain parts in the figure 8 to show like which way you're turning. And you have to parallel park, which they got rid of that in California.
They got rid of it in California? Wow.
Yeah. And but I trained so well to parallel park that I was able to do it even though the steering wheel's on the right side of the car. And,
wow.
And the stick shift is on the left, so
Yeah.
so I'm not really used to that, but I was able to do the test and parallel park and everything.
Nice.
The final part of the test was you go up a hill and you have to stop at a red light that's there. And then after 8 seconds, you go, and you have to go from a dead stop at an uphill incline and go forward without rolling back. But
that's a really good test.
What I didn't know was this car that he had randomly gotten off the street, the e-brake didn't work.
Oh.
So I put on the e-brake, and then the car had stalled, and so I was like, all right. And so I like start the car, and it's like rolling back, and I'm like slamming on the brake, and then pulling up the e-brake, but the e-brake isn't doing anything. And then I'm starting the car, rolling back some more, and then finally got it to go forward. And they're like, yeah, you failed. You rolled back like 2 feet. And I'm like, and so then we were able to arrange through some mutual friends and whatnot for a very decent newer car.
Oh, good. Okay.
That worked. And so I took the test 2 days ago, I think, if not yesterday. No, it's 2 days ago on Friday, and passed, and it was fine.
Nice.
So yeah, I can now drive in India. So now, even though we're in the boonies, we're in the village, we're in a very isolated place in our place down in Goa. Now we can drive to North Goa. We can drive to where the parties are at. We can drive to our favorite little crystal shop. We can drive to the mall. We can drive to any of the many beaches. We can drive to the cute little old Portuguese style community in the capital. It's all a maximum an hour, like an hour and a half if we want to go to the north part of North Goa. So yeah,
you'll be protected from roving gangs of wild dogs.
Yes, exactly. They bite 60 people a day, but there's 1.8 million people. So I'm like doing the math, and I'm like, that's not that many people. I mean, okay.
You mean India wide?
No, in Goa. In Goa, there's 1.8 million, and
1.8 million,
and 60 of them are showing up at the hospital, going, a dog bit me every day, and so that's a lot, but it's also not that many. I mean, 60 out of 1.8 million. There's 70. They estimate 70,000 stray dogs roaming around, and it's like, well, yeah, but there's 1.8 million people, so 70,000 seems like a big number, but when you put it next to 1.8 million, it's not that big of a big number. But it's like a dog for every so many hundred people.
Did you say that there's how many wild dogs?
70,000.
70,000 wild dogs.
Well, they're stray dogs. They're domesticated breeds of dogs. It's a state.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a smaller state, but it's a state. Actually, I don't know exactly what to compare it to. I think you could probably drive from the southern part of the state to the northern part in 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So
okay.
So probably bigger than Rhode Island, but not as big.
Yeah,
as
it's
Kansas.
bigger than Rhode Island. It's like how long, if you had to drive 2.5 hours,
halfway
maybe from the southern coast of New England up to Maine, that would be about 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
Like
something
you
like
go
that.
through Rhode Island, and then you go through Massachusetts, and you get into Maine. That's
Right.
that's what you meant. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like maybe like as far up and down as like Pennsylvania or something.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
don't know how wide.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been in California, so it's like not quite as big as California is wide, and definitely not as big as California is long. I think
Yeah.
not even India is that tall, or maybe it is
Oh,
just
okay.
about exactly that tall. California
I'm
is
gonna have to
tall.
look up like how big India is compared to the U.S. now, just to get an
Yeah,
idea. Like
it
that's
fits in it. Like I don't think it's
big.
quite as big as the U.S., but it's bigger than Texas. Like it's like a sizable chunk of the middle of the
Yeah,
U.S. It
yeah.
would take up, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So 70,000 wild dogs in Goa, and
Mm.
now they're less of a threat.
Yeah, yeah. With a car, they're less of a threat because what we hadn't really done a lot of like we were getting up to 2 kilometers per day, 4 kilometers per day, 6 kilometers per day walking, and
Mm-hmm.
then started like just about every time we were out walking, there'd be at least one weird confrontation with a group of dogs, and so yeah, it's like what you do determines what you experience because we never when we were living in North Goa 2 years ago, we didn't feel like there was a dog problem there. So at first
Mm.
we were like, well, we've got to move to North Goa. South Goa's got a big dog problem, and so we'll move to North Goa where we never had a dog problem, but we also weren't walking like at all. We definitely
Mm.
weren't walking 6 kilometers a day, and so we went and stayed in North Goa for a while, and a dog like full on like ran and almost like ran across the street right at me going, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that was terrifying. Like usually I'm
Mm.
not I'm the one being like, oh, don't be scared of dogs, but like that
Mm.
dog jarred me, and then I started to search, and I'm like, oh, the place here where we're staying right now in North Goa, we were staying in an Airbnb, like this is where the most problems are with stray dogs,
Oh,
turns
okay.
out. And so then we decided, oh well, let's not move to North Goa, then let's just get a car. And
Mm.
so then getting the driver's license became the priority. So hence that's where I am, getting here
Wow.
anyway. And then we're going to try to get that last ID card so I can open a normal bank account
Oh yeah.
tomorrow, and then we're going to see
Okay.
her aunt the day after, and then hopefully get on a plane and get out of this smog cloud urban jungle and get back down to my paradise, to the tropical beaches. I am
Mm.
so looking forward to putting my feet in the ocean again.
Mm.
You get
Mhm.
spoiled when you live down there, when you live in a place where there's a beach,
Oh
where you
yeah.
where you can just walk to the beach and just
You
like
just
put
go
your
there
feet
all
in
the
the
time.
ocean. And
Yeah. That's
but
yeah.
now there's I can feel the thousands of kilometers on all sides of me in which there is no ocean.
Mm.
I can feel it. Every breath is smoke instead of it's humid down there. And so one thing that's been nice is I hope people aren't totally bored by this rambling, but yeah, like when I'm in Goa for a long time, it never gets cold. That's the thing. Middle of the night, it's a bit warm. During the day, in the warmer months, it's pretty warm, but it's in Delhi, it gets up to like 124. Down there, it'll
Yeah.
get up to 95 and very humid, which is like a lot.
I mean,
95
that's
is
still a
very humid.
lot.
It's
That's
like,
still very
yeah,
hot.
yeah, but it's not
Not
like not
124 degrees.
120. Yeah. But then it has like 3 months of continuous rain every year, and we love that. Like I
Mm.
tell some people that, and they're like, "Oh, how awful!" And it's like that's why we moved there. we moved there for the 3 months of continuous rain, because like you just sit there, look out, see nothing but green and rain, and hear the thunder for 3 months. Like that's like this is paradise. This is literally paradise. And as I was talking to someone who's from there, a friend of mine there, about how ridiculous it is that people like aspire to get a job in Dubai, people from Goa. And I'm like, how backwards are things that people who were born and raised in the narrow strip of the planet Earth that has the most like ideal environment for life itself. The tropical regions of the planet Earth are more precious than anything else in the universe, as far as we can tell. Far more precious than diamonds, gold, platinum, or anything. And just so rare, such a and people want to go to Dubai, where no human, nothing but a scorpion, would choose to live there, except for the fact that they built this like concrete Las Vegas-y, kitsy like wealth thing, with oil.
Yep.
It's basically the same idea as Las Vegas. Bugsy driving through the desert and having a vision. Did you ever see Bugsy? I love that scene.
A long time ago. I don't remember.
Yeah. He's just driving through the desert and thinking about, oh, in this state, prostitution and gambling's legal. And he's like, oh, how about that? And then he's like driving through the desert and he just stops the car and gets out of the car and starts walking out into the sand. And the people think he's gone mad, but he's seeing Las Vegas in his mind. He's like, we're going to build a casino right here where I'm standing. And they're like, are you off your meds, dude? He's like, he was right. But that's the same thing as Dubai. Is like, oh, there's nothing here. Nobody's ever wanted to live here because it's completely inhospitable to living organisms. So it's the perfect place to build our fake paradise. But,
yeah, I mean, I used to live in Phoenix, and Phoenix is it's sort of the same way,
leaning
right?
in that direction. Yeah.
yeah, because people obviously people can't live in Phoenix without air conditioning because it's so hot. But then the other thing about Phoenix is that for the longest time, it was still not a lot of people lived there because you just couldn't. All the food had to be imported, right? Because it was a desert, right? So what they did was so part of the reason why Phoenix works sort of is because you have air conditioning, but then the other reason is because you can get local produce. And the way that you get local produce is they went out to the deserts and they were like, these deserts are terribly arid and dry, but the reason why nothing grows is because the soil itself is so poor, right? So what they did was they radically altered the chemistry of the soil itself, doing very chemically speaking, extremely toxic things, right? But the net result was that the soil was it went from sand to enriched soil, and so they were able to grow crops, and so that's why Phoenix is a thing now. So human beings have gotten good at going to desert environments and being like, okay, this is going to be a terrible place to live, but it will be possible to do that. And so
it's well named then in that case, Phoenix rising from the ashes.
Oh yeah, it literally rose from the ashes. Yeah. Chemical ashes.
Oh my God!
Now people will live here. They will
speaking of Dubai, I just my sister-in-law, someone went to Dubai, and people get crazy about Dubai. They're like, hey, have you been to Dubai? I'm like, I've been to the airport. They're like, oh, that's it. I'm like, yeah, it's not on my list. Not anywhere on my list. It's not toward the top of my list. It's just not on the list of places I want to go. But yeah, this is, I guess, the tallest building in the world now. So any tall building, you have to have a gold statue of it that people can buy in the gift shop.
I don't aspire to go to Dubai either.
Yeah, it looks like a very painful dildo. My first impression was like. Anyway,
not just a dildo, but a very painful one. Yeah. Imagine if you built a skyscraper that was not a painful dildo.
An unwelcome experience. Yeah. Time to play
I don't particularly aspire to go. I mean, it's not that I don't aspire to go anywhere. It's that I don't have I'm not well, if I could just go to this one place, everything would be amazing.
Right.
My life would be different.
But if somebody handed you a plane ticket with a blank check blank check version of a plane ticket. Like, here's the plane ticket; it'll take you anywhere, and here's a week off work. Then, what's the first place that you would write on it that you
I
think
would go to India and visit you.
Oh, sweet! Oh, that's nice. I'd show you all the best spots.
I know you would. That's part of why I would go.
Yeah. I haven't seen all of it, obviously. I don't think in a lifetime a person could see all of India, but I definitely have seen some of the real highlights.
You've seen some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Mhm. If you ever come to visit,
she wants to go to Scotland and England. It's
oh,
interesting
okay.
how things, depending on where you're from, or where you're at in the world, like something will seem like the most far off, interesting, exotic thing that you could possibly
Mhm.
see. And so for her, that's Scotland. Is
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
from
Um, Scotland has it's called it might be a biennial thing, I'm not sure, but it's in August, a fringe festival takes place
mm,
where there's all these like where it's like a world thing, like all these different all these different actors and all these different acting troops, they all go to
mm.
Scotland and they have the fringe festival. So
How
what you
fun.
can what you can do during the fringe festival is like there's like many plays going on 24/7 all
Mm,
the time. And so you
mm.
can go and just like you'll be in one play or another for like 7 days or something like that, or like
Wow, what
eight
a
days or
trip.
something like that. You can just go and
Mm.
go and go. So you can like go all day and then like stop for dinner, watch one more, and then go to sleep. And my wife has
Yeah.
done this. She's done this before.
How
Um,
cool.
and and like when I heard about it, because I'm not really much of a play person.
Mm.
Like I'll go, but I have I don't want to call them standards, but I have like there are some things I don't do anymore. Like one thing
Mm.
is if I can help it, I the only musicals I go to are musicals where I know somebody personally involved in the musical.
Right,
Then I'm like,
right.
okay, well, I want to support this person and I want to see the creative work that they've done. And so I'm going to go to
Yeah,
that, right? But I don't
yeah,
just
yeah.
like go to musicals. And then the other thing I don't do is my wife and I are both the same way about this. We don't go to plays that are more than 2 hours long. We're
Right.
like, at some point this goes from being entertained to being like part of the entertainment, like just by the sheer torture of sitting there for more than 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
so we don't do it.
Mm.
So but I could totally, and I feel like you could do this too. Like if there was a Fringe festival, there's like this endurance athlete part of it, right? Where like you're going. And because like when you do something for more than like do it for less than if you do it for less than 2 hours, then it's fun. If you do it for more than two, less than six, then it's torture. If you do it for more than six, then it becomes something else. Like
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
beyond the torture, and
Yeah,
now
yeah.
like because like that torture period, the torture is like you opening up and getting rid of all your like life crap, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so after 6 hours, you're like, I'm learning new things about myself. And you start to like have visions and things because you've tortured the daily life out of yourself.
Yeah, back in the early '90s, my mom and I we used to be pretty naughty in certain. We went to an AMC 14, and I got a matinee ticket at 11 a.m. and
Oh, okay.
just kind of like left the movie theater, went to the washroom, went into a different movie theater,
Hmm.
like bought some popcorn, take the jacket off, change the hat, like check so people don't notice, and refill the popcorn, go here, go there. We did that until like 1:30 in the morning. And so
Wow.
like 13 and a half hours of movies, and some of them, I think I saw Jurassic Park 2.5 times that day. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember distinctly at a certain point getting up, leaving the theater, walking toward the bathroom, going to the bathroom, leaving the bathroom, washing my hands, walking down the hall, and remembering that I'm a guy named Edward at a movie theater. At that time. It was all automatic, like going to the bathroom, washing my hands. That was autopilot. And then suddenly it occurred to me, oh, I exist. I am a person. This is now. I'm at a movie theater. That's fun.
I think it would be really fun to go to like a movie festival or like a film festival or like a play festival with like a group of other people.
I think those music festivals, I think there's that similar effect, especially because there's often like substances involved too. So I'm sure people get into an alternate space where they go see this band and go see that band, walking across some big field, and like crowds of people and lights and noise and everything, kind of forgetting who they are and all that.
I think maybe that's part of the point of festivals, right?
Yeah, I went to one, Lollapalooza 2, and it happened to be the morning after. The night before I went was the first time I had ever smoked weed. I think that was September of 1994.
Wow.
Like a month and a half before I joined the Golden Dawn. It's fun.
That's funny. Hey, I just thought of a fun question. I guess we've been at it for a couple hours now. I just thought of a fun question. This is a question that I was just asking somebody else this morning. Okay, so our particular version of the Golden Dawn brought us it brought us through thick and thin, and it brought us to the Adeptus Minor grade, right? And then, but then from there, the grades get. I heard somebody once said this to me, and it's really apt. I think the grades get more administrative, right? Like you're an Adeptus Major because you habitually
chair
because you sit in that chair and you habitually instruct Adeptus Minori and the other grades, right? So you're kind of a de facto Adeptus Major, but there's no formal Adeptus Major grade that I know of. For
us, there wasn't.
For us, there wasn't. Right.
Right.
So, if you wanted to become an Adeptus Major, what would you do?
Well, apparently in Cicero's order, there are very simple, direct, to the point ceremonies that they go through for 6 = 5 and 7 = 4. And in the Zalewski lineage, they have some very flowery, very ornate, very interesting initiations that they go through for the 6 = 5 and the 7 = 4. But yeah, as far as my experience of it, like at a certain point, like Ramsey would be told that he's a 6 = 5 now, just by virtue of like one of the Third Order whispered it in Robert's ear late at night or something. I don't know. Maybe they did some like, improvised ceremony or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I always kind of, I was such a good boy, like I didn't ask questions that I felt were inappropriate to ask, so I never even asked anyone like, so how do I get up to 6 = 5? Like even in the most polite possible way of phrasing that, I never, that question never crossed my lips, but I think at a certain point I started to feel like there was a Giboric energy that I was experiencing, that my solar, I am in the center of the tree, like kind of set in. And then, I mean, I went through processes, but then after a period when I started to feel like this wrathful, like wanting to defend the order from the chief of the order, kind of energy. And then I kind of felt like I had naturally drifted into a 6 = 5 current. And then, later, or I guess even more recently, there's some part of me, that like, it's like I don't want to sound like I'm not humble, but there's some part of me that feels like by, like leaving it all behind, let someone else be the angry 6 = 5 who's trying to cleanse the order, and I'm going to go to India and wear a lot of blue. Um, it's like I've drifted up into 7 = 4. I mean,
Yeah.
when I left, I was premonstrator. So as far as administratively, I was the 7 = 4 in the formula of the Z formula. The imperator represents 6 = 5. The cancellary is 5 = 6, as well as the hierophant and the past hierophant, obviously, and then the premonstrator is the 7 = 4. But then our approach was always that when it comes to the beyond the veil, that whatever we present is different from what's really going on behind the scenes. And but then there was a point where what was going on behind the scenes was different from what was really going on behind the scenes, and then it was like really weird, where at one point in 2009, RZ had been so naughty that he, in order to keep the family together, in order to keep the order from falling apart, said, I'm no longer going to be the chief. And everybody was like, okay, I'm listening. Where are you going to fuck off to? You're going to never be in touch with any of the outer order? And he's like, well, we'll talk about that. Like, you're not going to be selling them shit or molesting them or threatening black magic on them or any of that stuff that you've been doing. He's like, well, let's just say I'm not going to be the chief. I'm going to be an advisor, like a former chief advisor to the new chiefs. You 5 are going to be the chiefs. And then, but then he got a girlfriend. and she was like, wow, you're the head of your own order? And he's like, yes, I used to be the chief, and now I'm the supreme magus. And so the supreme magus office was created, and it was the office of the 9 = 2. And he had me go get a silver yarmulke for him for his new gray and silver themed uniform that was the lord over the chiefs. And of course, a lot of people weren't having that. And after a couple years, 3 of the 5 chiefs that he had appointed left and started a new order, leaving me and the other chief, Ramsey. And so I started to think, okay, if these chiefs have the freedom to go start another order, then surely I have the freedom to say that the classes at my house are open to the people who left and to people who stayed behind. So I did that. And, and then the other chief of the Temple of Isis was like, don't do that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that anyway, because that's what I'm going to do.
Because I'm going to do it.
And then nobody came because everybody hated all the people on the other side. So I was like, well, I'm going to open my classes up to the public. And so I did that. And I was like, and I'm going to take my curtains down. And I did that. And then at a certain point, he had had enough. And he was like, okay, we had stopped having our Sunday meetings, mandatory Sunday meetings. And he was like, we're going to reinstitute the mandatory Sunday meetings. I'm like, oh, cool. Have fun. I won't be there. I got a taste of freedom, and I'm sorry, I'm not gonna let the word mandatory become a part of my vocabulary again, as far as my schedule, my weekly schedule, And he was like, well, you are the second most senior person in the order. You have to set an example. And I'm like, well, that sounds like a real problem you have. Glad I don't have that problem, because anyway, I'm not going to be there. And so then he was like, well, do you want to leave? And I was like, I can leave. And that was the lights. There's the exit, And so I was like, gave a speech at the equinox and took off my premonstrator robe, and and it was just such a lovely experience, and probably the most cordial exit of any adept in any Golden Dawn order in all of history, for anybody who's like who quit being, just 100% left. Anyway, I don't know how I got telling that story. I know I've told that story at least 3 times on here, so the regular listeners are gonna be like, "Oh, he's doing this again." But anyway, yeah. As far as those grades, Eric V. Cisco in episode 120, we talked a little bit about that. and he talked about that those rituals do exist in the Cicero order,
Mhm.
and Pat Zalewski published the ones that he uses.
Mhm.
Maybe he put some veils in it. I don't know. But they used to be hand like he printed them at Kinko's with the binding and then mailed them to you from New Zealand. But I don't know if they're more formally published now. But probably RC knows better than me about that.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think he's been through the 6=5
Mhm.
in Martin's temple over in Eastern Canada. But yeah, I don't know. I think for us it's just a matter of personal alchemy and
Mhm.
just like that.
Very interesting. So,
Yeah.
so you had, remember you had an idea? You
I
had an
did. Oh,
idea with,
I actually sent that, but nobody seems to be taking us up on it.
oh, okay.
So, oh well. What we're talking about is that. Oh, nobody even saw it. 0 people have seen the post. Um, well, maybe as a one person clicked like on it, but she has to wait until she retires from her government job before she can be on my podcast.
Okay.
She's the only person. Should I open it up more publicly to
Have to retire from a government job.
well, she has a job where she doesn't want them to know that she does weird shit, basically.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
But she will retire and she will come on the Esoterinerd podcast. So I'm going to post this on my regular BT, but I'm going to take out the part of the August and Elite Facebook group.
You're part of this.
There's a Facebook group called Esoterinerd. If you're not on it, search for Esoterinerd. It's different from the Facebook page called the Esoterinerd podcast if you want to be in the Elite and August group. Otherwise, that's what we're talking about. So now I'm posting it on the main. Now we might get just any old weirdo.
Great.
We could just get the weirdest person.
Sounds
and
great.
We'll talk for another 10 minutes and see if anybody takes us up on our offer. Okay, if you're reading this, that means Joe Zabinski and I are currently this very moment recording Esoterinerd episode 130 on a Zoom video call. The moment we finish, I'll be deleting this post. I thought it would be fun to open up the latter part of the conversation to any surprise guest who wants to jump in randomly and say hi. That means you, potentially. It's up to you. So if you want, you're cordially invited to join the conversation by clicking here. And hopefully that link works. So was there anything about the Arbatel that we haven't covered?
Yeah. The guy that I thought was cool that the
the
contemporary
Italian
person,
guy. Yeah.
the Italian guy, right? So it says, it is a canon that everyone know his own angel, and that he obey him according to the word of God, and let him beware of the snares of the evil angel, lest he be involved in the calamities of Brute and Marcus Antonius.
Right.
By the way, the thing that they're talking about there is they're talking about classical Roman history, where Brutus was the guy who organized the people that killed Caesar, right? But
and
then
Mark Antony tried to go up against Julius Caesar too. So the author of Arbatel loves Julius Caesar's ass and empire itself as a concept. I think it was the Holy Roman Empire back then, wasn't it? Wouldn't Switzerland have been? I don't know my history and geography well enough. Or they called them. It was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, but that was what they called themselves or something.
Right. So here's Joe's 60-second description of thousands of years of history. You got classical Rome, right?
Right.
Well, okay. So the Greeks come along to somewhere in Italy, and they're like, this place is cool. And so they start a Greek colony, right? And then they start a couple more Greek colonies. Well, eventually that kind of sort of becomes the uh, classical Roman Empire, right?
Right.
And at first just in Italy, and then it spreads throughout Europe, right? And then it's just this European empire, right? So eventually that European empire like sort of falls apart, but it doesn't, it doesn't go away. There's a schism.
Right,
there's a schism, and then part of the empire is like
becomes the Byzantine.
Part of the empire becomes the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire is the Eastern Roman Empire. So it's the continuation of the Eastern Roman Empire. And yes, over time, it starts to take on the traditions of Byzantium, but it is the Roman Empire. So it's just this continuation, right? And then that just keeps going and going and going until,
Ottoman.
I don't know.
When was
the Ottomans eventually come in. They're like, we're going to make this the Ottoman Empire now, but it's just a rebranding. It's just this rebranding over and over again of some form of Roman Empire. Well, the Holy Roman Empire is it's basically it's a continuation of like sort of the Western Roman Empire,
right? But based in Austria.
Right, but based in Germany
or something. Yeah. Okay.
Germany and Austria is like where they continue. But the idea of the Holy Roman Empire was to just keep up the Roman Empire. So that's the Roman Empire. So it's just been this like brand of European civilization.
I guess it's from an American perspective, we don't like King George. We prefer George Washington. And you know what I mean? It's the most basic imprint of our national identity is revolution, is throw off the king, no tyrants, which is actually, which is the old school Roman, so a big wheel, went around one big cycle, because before Julius Caesar, that was the Roman ethic, was no kings, no tyrants. Yeah. It's we're a representative democracy here,
which is why Brutus stabbed Caesar in the first place.
Right. And so I'm on the side of Brutus, like as an American, I don't think Shakespeare was, but, I don't think it was meant to, I mean, I haven't seen the play, but it seems like Brutus was meant to be a villain character in Shakespeare's telling of it. But, so when Ides of March rolls around, people joke about it and post, ranch dressing or Caesar dressing with the knife in it and all that, but nobody's talking about, nobody's putting Brutus next to Judas,
Right. Yeah. And
at least no Americans aren't anyway. Yeah. But so there's still some imperialists and monarchists in Europe and even in US, that would probably be like, oh, that guy, he shouldn't have killed Julius Caesar. That was me.
Right. And I think that list includes like the 16th century author of the Arbatel, right?
Exactly.
To an extent, because he's like, because he takes there's a legend associated with Brutus that like as he was dying, like the evil spirits associated with the heinous acts that he had performed came to visit him again. Like this idea,
like when traditional Golden Dawners talk about Crowley dying. Oh, what a fool!
Right? Yeah.
Oh, I've done terrible things.
Look at the terrible thing. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Let him beware of the snares of the evil angel. Apparently, this evil angel guided Brutus to do terrible things. But then my point is that the Arbatel says to this refer the book of Jovianus Pontanus of Fortune.
Jovianus Pontanus of Fortune.
Okay. So Jovius Pontanus wrote a book on fortune.
Okay.
And that's
we should find that.
So we should find that. So there's two books that it refers to. It says, to this refer the book of Julius Pontanus of Fortune and his Eutychus. So there's two books. There's the Book of Fortune and the Book of Eutychus. Not
Mm.
not like biblical books, but those are what they're called, like on Eutychus and on Fortune.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that would, I would think, see, but it's interesting because I'm not sure what it's referring to. So it says, so it goes, it is a canon that everyone know his own angel. And then a little bit later, it says, to this refer the book of Pontanus, right?
Hmm.
I'm not sure if Pontanus's book is about knowing your own angel or if it's about the calamities of Brutus.
Mm. Yeah, interesting.
It's vague.
Yeah. Know
So,
your own angel.
but
Is
it
that
would be
like the
really
holy
cool
guardian angel?
to check out
Mm.
this Pontanus character's books to find out what he's talking about,
Yeah,
what the
for
Arbatel
sure.
is talking
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was thinking I could, or just while we're waiting to see if anybody takes us up on our invitation. Here's the Saturn aphorism. Well, my notes. The Saturn aphorism of the Saturn septenary is all about secrets. Keep secrets. You know, like that when the spirit,
about.
especially when the spirit tells you to keep a secret. And then Jupiter aphorism of Jupiter septenary. It talks about the different types of wisdom, where there's the wisdom of God up at the top, the wisdom of the angels, the wisdom of man, the wisdom of the pygmies. Now, I'm not sure what they were referring to in 16th century Sweden there, but I'll keep reading. And then, so then Mars of Mars was that the servants of each spirit will obey and do great things, even as Joshua was able to make the sun stand still in heaven, which will remind any philosophist of, I mean, unless the Hierophant just phoned in their performance of the tower portion, that is the most tragic thing that can ever take place in a Golden Dawn order, is when the Hierophant phones in the tower card portion of the Philosophers Initiation. You are supposed to traumatize that poor child. You're supposed to make them cry and leave the order afterward. That's how you do a tower card portion of a Philosophers Initiation. Thou didst thrash the heathen in thine anger. Not thou didst thrash the heathen in thine anger. That's like, oh.
I mean, just like generally speaking, like a burnt out Hierophant is like a really tragic thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Where because they're supposed to be the initiator, right? And yet they're like standing outside, like
reading
smoking
off
a cigarette.
Yeah.
Drinking.
Well, I did that, but I also did a good job with my performance.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Then I'd go out and have a cigarette afterward.
So
and I'd put tobacco in the incense for the tower card portion.
Right. So when we do the
cayenne
unthinkable,
pepper.
when we do the unthinkable and we like start another initiatory society, like the one thing you got to do is take care of your Hierophants. Take care of the people that are supposed to be initiating these people, because they're the ones that are gonna get it done, right? And if they're happy, then the rest of the order is happy. If they're unhappy,
the tragedy, I mean, because the problem was, like, sometimes you'd choose the Hierophant for the initiates. It's like, oh, this Hierophant is going to be really good for those initiates and for those initiations. But other times it's, well, every adept at some point in their journey, as part of their process, has to be Hierophant. So even though this person is lacking in these, aspects of personality,
you all have to do it.
They're gonna have to do it for a full 6
garbage.
months. So that's 6 months of going to initiations and somebody reading Procol, Este Profani, like, or whatever. Just kind of like, why any of this? Why?
Yeah, and then all those
only being
are like,
in an abyss of darkness, and per an abyss of darkness, hence I came forth. It's okay, those aren't the words, and not the emphasis. You realize the neophyte's right there. This is the actual performance. Okay, real quick. Mercury of Mercury is where is it? Keep secret what the spirits say to keep secret. Is that no? That's Mercury of Mars. Venus of Venus. No idol worship. All right, that's fair enough. You know, when you're worshiping something that's not God, it's like this statue. Oh, this cow is really.
Look at the yams on that cow.
Shiny statue of a cow. Oh. Get my food and incense out. Of course, I'm in the land of idol worship, so that's fine. But you know, it's what you do. It's like, oh, there's a statue of a cow. Anybody got any milk I can rub on the phallus next to it?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like you have to like I don't know. To me, anyway, like you can't take any of this too seriously,
right?
You know, because like, okay, yes, it's a 16th century grimoire, but just keep in mind that it was written probably like it was written somewhere in Europe in a very like narrow, structured way of thinking. You know what I mean? Like before you had all of this, you know, like before you had all of this Christianity, before you had, you know, if you want to go this direction, like you had the Greeks, right? And as soon as you get to the Greeks, then you start to get into idol worship again. And then the whole idea of spiritism is something that supports all of humanity, you know? Yeah. And so like you just can't, I don't know. You can't condemn any of this stuff as severely as Christianity often does, because like, dude, we don't live in a world of Christian supremacy anymore, and we don't want to.
Yeah,
you know? That's just
Moses smashed the golden calf in the you know, but now people judge the folks that from one branch of the traditions of Moses go around in today's day and age smashing idols. It's considered rude, you know. But they're coming from kind of the same teachings that our man who wrote the Arbatel is, which is the teachings of the Abrahamic faiths.
Yep.
No idols.
I guess what I'm saying is, you people who live in the year 4000, don't just go around smashing golden calves.
Unless by smashing you mean smashing, you know what I'm saying? Then make sure that the golden calf is of the age of consent. That's it. Never mind. All right, I guess maybe we can leave it at that. Unless you have it. Excuse me. All right, I'll delete the invitation. Nobody took us up on it. Maybe next time. We'll make this a habit. The next time we talk, at a certain point, I'll post a similar link. Yeah, nobody wanted to be a surprise guest. That's probably a good thing.
Probably. Who knows what we were getting into?
Right?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely. This was a fun discussion.
This was a
fun topic. And thank you, Rishikesh 1086, for the question, for prompting this discussion in this episode.
Rishikesh, I hope to one day have you as a surprise guest on, I don't know, some podcast I'm on, because this isn't my
or a planned guest. Come on and be a guest.
Yes, that's a good idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah. All right. Okay, brother. I'll talk to you soon. We'll be in touch.
Yeah. Much love. I'll see you. I'll see you in the online spaces.
Yeah, for sure.
All the time.
Absolutely.
All right. See you later.
Peace. Namaste. LVX. How did that go? Oh, never mind.
All right.
You remember that?
Yes, yes,
yeah.
I do. Yes, I do. All right. See you later.
Revealing inner order secrets.
I
Okay.
do remember.
See you.
All right.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you, Joe Zabinski, for being my guest, co-host. Such labels are for mercurialists. Am I right? Really, am I right? Anyway, special thanks to Susumu Ueda and his father and the other monks at Jofuku Inn on Mount Koyasan for the music you're hearing right now. There's also the introductory music to this and every other Esoterinerd episode. Special thanks to Camille and Kennerly for the harp intro and outro to the conversation itself. And most importantly, special thanks to you, the Esoterinerd, listening to this podcast. Don't forget to smash that like button, if you know what I mean, and I will see you next time. Until then.